pine saw was already open before the sun came up. You could hear her wringing out that mop from the back bedroom, moving through every room like she had a system older than the walls. Nothing stayed dirty long in that house. Here are 30 forgotten African American habits to never have a messy home. Saturday morning cleaning in a black household was not a suggestion, it was law. Before cartoons, before breakfast, before anyone even thought about going outside, the music came on. Aretha, Al Green, maybe the Mighty Clouds of Joy if your grandmother was feeling sanctified. That was the signal. You had your assignment and you knew it by heart. The bathroom, the baseboards, the kitchen floor. Nobody had to tell you twice because being told twice meant trouble. Your mother ran that house like a foreman, checking behind you with a wet finger on the windowsill or a palm across the top of the refrigerator. If she found dust, you did it again. By noon, every surface shone, every cushion sat straight, and the smell of pine saw mixed with whatever was simmering on the stove. That ritual taught you something no classroom ever could, that the home you kept was a reflection of the people inside it. The bed got made before your feet were all the way on the floor. Not after breakfast, not after brushing your teeth. The very first thing you did when you opened your eyes was pull those sheets tight, tuck the corners under the mattress, and smooth the spread flat with the palm of your hand. Your grandmother could tell from the hallway whether you'd done it right. She didn't even have to walk in the room. A wrinkle in the bedspread was a wrinkle in your character. That's how she saw it. It took 60 seconds, and it set the tone for every minute after. The pillow sat centered, the edges hung even on both sides, and nobody sat on that bed again until nighttime. If company came and that bedroom door happened to be open, the bed told them everything they needed to know about how you were raised. Every black household had a room that existed only for people who didn't live there. The front room, sometimes called the parlor or just the good room, was off limits to children and most adults on any regular day. The furniture was nicer than anything in the rest of the house, often purchased on layaway over months during a time when redlining and job discrimination made every dollar a fight. The carpet still had vacuum lines. The doilies sat perfectly on the armrests, glass figurines on the shelf that you learned very early not to touch. That room stayed ready, always, because company could come at any time and its condition spoke before anyone in the family did. It was a quiet way of saying, we take care of what's ours. Some of those front rooms stayed perfect for decades, outlasting the women who kept them that way. She was out there before the dew dried, broom in hand, sweeping the porch and the front steps like the president was coming. It didn't matter if nobody was expected. It didn't matter if she'd swept the day before. That porch was the first thing people saw, and in her mind, it was the frame around the picture of her entire household. The tradition runs deeper than habit. Swept yards, traced back to West Africa, where clearing the ground around the home served both spiritual and practical purposes, from repelling pests to creating clean outdoor living space. In the American South, Black families continued the practice with homemade brooms crafted from broom sedge gathered at field edges. By the 1950s, the broom was store-bought, but the principle hadn't changed. A clean porch told the neighborhood who lived there. A dirty one invited talk, and talk traveled faster than any broom could sweep. If the porch was the frame, the windows were the eyes, and she kept them clear enough to see your reflection. No Windex, no paper towels, just white vinegar, water, and yesterday's newspaper balled up in her fist. She'd wipe in tight circles until every streak vanished, then hold the pane to the light to check her work. The ink in the newsprint acted as a mild polish, and the vinegar cut through grease without leaving residue, It cost almost nothing. A gallon of vinegar ran about 15 cents in the 1950s, and the newspaper was already read and paid for. That combination could outperform anything on a store shelf, and every woman on the block knew it. Her windows didn't just look clean, they looked like they weren't even there. Monday belonged to the laundry. Not Monday morning, not Monday when you got around to it. The entire day, sunrise to dark, was claimed by the wash. Clothes were sorted the night before, white separate, dark separate, work clothes in their own pile because the stains required different treatment. Everything followed an order refined over generations, a system African-American laundress had perfected since Reconstruction, when washing was one of the few ways a black woman could earn independent income. The Atlanta washerwomen's strike of 1881, 3,000 black laundresses walking off the job for fair wages, proved just how much power that knowledge held. In household after household, whites went first because the water was cleanest. Colors came next, the heaviest work clothes went last, and water that had already done 2 jobs. Nothing was wasted. Not the water, not the soap, not a single hour of daylight. By afternoon, the line was full, sheets catching wind like sails. Tuesday was for ironing, but Monday was sacred. The smell hit you from across the yard. Sun-dried cotton and bleach, sharp and clean and warm. Whites went on the line first, stretched tight between wooden clothespins, because direct sunlight did something no machine could replicate. Ultraviolet light naturally bleached the fabric, and open air pulled moisture out of the cotton in a way that left sheets smelling like nothing but sky. Some women added a bluing agent to the final rinse, a practice dating to the 1870s to counteract the yellowing that came with age. A few drops of Mrs. Stewart's bluing in cold water, and those whites came off the line so bright they almost hurt to look at. You learned to fold a fitted sheet into a perfect square right there in the yard, arms wide, meeting your mother in the middle, fold after fold until it sat flat in the closet like it had never been opened. Using dryer sheets to reduce static and repel dust from surfaces was an African-American housekeeping discovery that cleaning companies now incorporate into products. Grandmothers would wipe television screens, blinds, and baseboards with used dryer sheets, preventing dust from resettling for days afterward. Scientists confirm that dryer sheets contain positively charged ingredients that neutralize static electricity while leaving a thin coating that repels airborne particles. The technique kept homes cleaner longer between deep cleanings, reducing labor for busy women managing households. This hack recycled sheets that would otherwise be thrown away after single laundry use. Women shared this discovery at church meetings and neighborhood gatherings where efficient housekeeping earned respect and admiration. She starched things most people today wouldn't even think to iron. Pillowcases, napkins, dish towels. Every collar got double attention, dipped in liquid starch, wrung by hand, hung just damp enough, then pressed with an iron so hot you could hear the fabric hiss. Thomas Rump, whose mother Maisie worked as a domestic in Baumberg, South Carolina, remembered her rubbing the heated iron against cedar limbs before pressing. The coating helped the iron glide smooth and left the faintest trace of wood on the cloth. That kind of detail didn't come from a manual. It came from standing beside her at the board, learning the pressure, the angle, the speed. Starch wasn't vanity, it was armor. A crisply pressed shirt told the world you came from a house that paid attention. The iron is cold now. The board is folded somewhere in a closet. Nobody presses pillowcases anymore. Rubbing walnuts on scratched wood furniture was a restoration technique passed through generations of African American families. When wooden tables and chairs showed wear, grandmothers would rub walnut meat directly into scratches, watching them seemingly disappear. Scientists now understand that walnut oil penetrates wood grain, while the natural brown pigments fill and camouflage light-colored scratches. The technique worked best on medium to dark finishes, where the walnut's color blended naturally. This hack saved families from expensive refinishing while keeping beloved furniture in service for decades. Women kept bowls of walnuts handy not just for eating, but for furniture maintenance. The practice represented practical wisdom about natural oils and wood care passed quietly between generations. Nothing left that house if it could still serve a purpose. When a shirt lost its last button or a towel wore through in the center, it didn't see a garbage can. It got cut into squares and dropped into the rag bag. Every household had one, hung on a hook behind the kitchen door or stuffed in the bottom of a closet. Old undershirts became dust cloths. Worn socks went over your hand for wiping baseboards. You never knew what you'd pull out of that bag. Could be a piece of your uncle's old work shirt, your sister's church dress from 3 Easters ago, a scrap of curtain that used to hang in a room that didn't exist anymore. Nobody was sentimental about it. That was just what fabric did when it was done being clothes. It went to work a second time. During the Depression and well into the 1960s, paper towels were an expense most Black families skipped entirely. You washed the rags, dried them on the line, and put them back. The cycle had no end. Applying mayonnaise to remove water stains from wooden furniture was an African-American remedy that furniture experts now endorse. Grandmothers would spread mayonnaise over white rings left by wet glasses, cover with cloth, and let it sit overnight, revealing restored wood by morning. Food scientists understand that mayonnaise's combination of oil and vinegar penetrates wood grain, rehydrating dried fibers, while mild acid dissolves mineral deposits. This technique saved countless tables from permanent damage without expensive refinishing. The hack required only pantry staples and patience, making it accessible to any household. Women passed this knowledge through generations, rescuing precious furniture that represented significant family investments. Making baking soda paste to remove tarnish from silver was an African-American cleaning secret that jewelers now endorse. Grandmothers would mix baking soda with water to form a thick paste, then gently rub it onto blackened silver using soft cloths until the metal gleamed. Scientists confirmed that baking soda's mild alkalinity reacts with silver sulfide tarnish, breaking it down without scratching the precious metal beneath. This technique restored heirloom jewelry, serving pieces and picture frames that represented family history. The hack cost virtually nothing compared to professional polishing services or commercial silver cleaners containing harsh chemicals. Women taught daughters this method while telling stories about where each piece came from, connecting cleaning rituals to family heritage and memory. The plastic went on before anyone sat down. Sometimes it was ordered the same day the furniture was purchased, custom fitted, measured to the inch, sealed over the cushions like a second skin. In summer, your thighs stuck to it and peeled away with a sound the whole room could hear. Nobody complained because everybody understood. That sofa represented months of layaway payments during decades when Black families were systematically denied loans and fair wages. The Tenement Museum in New York documented how plastic slipcovers spread across African American, Puerto Rican, Jewish, and Italian households in the 1960s. Families who understood that replacing what you owned was not always possible. The plastic kept upholstery factory new for years, sometimes decades. Kids grew up, moved out, came back with their own kids, and that couch still looked like the day it arrived. Using coffee grounds to deodorize refrigerators was standard practice in African American households decades before commercial deodorizers existed. Grandmothers would place bowls of spent grounds on refrigerator shelves where they absorbed odors from onions, fish, and leftovers with remarkable effectiveness. Scientists have since confirmed that coffee's porous structure and nitrogen content make it exceptionally effective at trapping volatile odor compounds. The grounds work better than baking soda for many strong smells. This hack recycled kitchen waste into a cleaning solution, exemplifying the waste nothing philosophy of resourceful households. Women who couldn't afford commercial products created their own solutions, proving that ingenuity could replace spending. The care didn't stop at the front door, it pushed right out into the dirt itself. In the rural South, Black families swept the yard completely bare, clearing every blade of grass and fallen leaf until the ground packed hard as stone. The practice came straight from West Africa, where cleared compounds served as outdoor living spaces, cooking areas, and gathering places for the whole community. Enslaved Africans carried the tradition to America, and it persisted through sharecropping and the Great Migration into the mid-20th century. Yard brooms, different from house brooms, were fashioned from bundled broom sedge or tree branches and swept the earth smooth each morning. Bare ground discouraged snakes and kept insects from nesting near the home. Catherine Waiters of Mars Bluff, South Carolina, still swept her yard daily into the 1980s, making brooms by hand from branches bound with twine. When she passed, the yard grew over. The grass returned like it had been waiting for permission. Using cooking oil to remove adhesive residue from surfaces was a solution African American households discovered long before commercial removers existed. When labels, tape, and stickers left sticky messes, grandmothers would apply vegetable oil, let it soak briefly, then wipe away residue that nothing else could touch. Scientists understand that oil dissolves petroleum-based adhesives used in most sticky products, breaking bonds that water and soap cannot affect. The technique worked on glass, plastic, and finished wood without scratching or staining. This hack used ingredients already in every kitchen, eliminating need for special purchases. Women shared this wisdom when jar labels resisted removal or price tags marred gifts. The practice showed how basic chemistry solved problems cheaply. Using onion halves to absorb paint fumes was an African American household trick that painters now recommend. When fresh paint made rooms unbearable, grandmothers would cut onions in half and place them around the space, somehow neutralizing the harsh chemical smell within hours. Scientists have confirmed that onions contain sulfur compounds that bind with volatile organic compounds released by paint, effectively removing them from the air. The onions would turn dark as they absorb toxins, serving as visual proof of their effectiveness. This hack was particularly important in homes without air conditioning, where opening windows wasn't always practical during hot summers or cold winters. Women protected their families from harmful fumes using nothing but vegetables from their kitchens. The soap came from the fireplace. Wood ash collected through winter was soaked in water to make lye, then boiled in a cast iron pot with saved animal fat, tallow from cooking, because nothing went to waste. The mixture bubbled for hours, stirred with a long wooden paddle, and when it cooled, it was cut into rough blocks that could scrub anything clean. The smell was heavy and sharp, the kind that clung to your hair, but that soap could strip a floor back to bare wood. It could pull grease from overalls worn 6 days straight. Black families across the South made lye soap well into the 1950s. long after store-bought bars were available, because the homemade version was free, it was powerful, and it belonged to them. The recipe passed mother to daughter without a single written word, and when the daughters stopped making it, the knowledge didn't vanish. It just went quiet, waiting in the ash. There was no standing up for this one. She got down on both knees with a bucket of hot water, a stiff bristled brush, and a bar of lye soap or a rag soaked in bleach, and she scrubbed that floor one plank at a time. The wood turned pale under the pressure, almost white in some houses, clean enough that you could have eaten off it, and some families did, spreading newspaper for the children's lunch right there on the boards. The WPA narratives from formerly enslaved people describe the same practice on plantation cabin floors. Dirt, packed so hard it looked like stone, swept and scrubbed until it gleamed. The tradition survived emancipation and traveled north with the Great Migration, adapting from dirt floors to pine boards to hardwood. Her knees bore the proof. They were calloused and sore by her 40s, stiff by her 60s, and by the time she couldn't get down anymore, nobody in the house scrubbed the way she had. The floors still got mopped, but they never looked like that again. Sprinkling salt on carpet stains before vacuuming was a cleaning method African American housekeepers swore by for generations. When red wine, coffee, or grease hit the floor, grandmothers would immediately cover the spot with table salt, letting it absorb the liquid before vacuuming away. Scientists now explain that salt's crystalline structure draws moisture through osmosis, while its mild abrasive properties lift pigments from fibers. The technique worked especially well on fresh stains before they set permanently. This hack cost pennies and required no special equipment beyond what every kitchen contained. Women taught their daughters to act quickly with salt rather than panic over spills. The practice demonstrated how simple chemistry could outperform expensive commercial spot removers. Hanging wet towels to cool rooms before air conditioning was an African American survival technique during brutal southern summers. Grandmothers would soak towels in cold water and hang them near windows or doorways, dropping room temperatures by several noticeable degrees. Scientists explain this as evaporative cooling, where water absorbing heat as it transitions to vapor removes thermal energy from surrounding air. Removing air from open windows accelerated evaporation and increased cooling effect. This hack required no electricity and cost nothing beyond water, making it accessible to families without modern conveniences. Women would rotate towels throughout the day, keeping homes bearable during dangerous heat waves. The practice demonstrated sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics. Using banana peels to polish leather shoes was an African American shoe shine technique that leather experts now validate. When commercial polish was unavailable or unaffordable, grandmothers would rub the inside of banana peels on leather, then buff with soft cloth to reveal remarkable shine. Scientists have discovered that banana peels contain potassium and natural oils that condition leather while waxy. Residue creates protective shine. The technique worked on everything from church shoes to work boots, keeping families looking respectable on limited budgets. This hack recycled kitchen scraps into grooming supplies, wasting nothing while achieving professional results. Children learned to save banana peels for Sunday morning shoe preparation, understanding that presentation mattered regardless of circumstances. You didn't need an actual white glove. Her finger worked fine. She'd run it along the top of a door frame, across the back of a picture frame, underneath the lip of a windowsill, and if it came back with even a trace of dust, you were doing the whole room over. The standard came from the same place a lot of these habits did. Decades of Black women working in white households where perfection was the minimum and anything less meant losing the job. Dorothy Bolden, who founded the National Domestic Workers Union in Atlanta in 1968, spent years organizing women who had internalized those standards and brought them home to their own families. The white glove test wasn't cruelty, it was precision, learned under pressure and passed down as pride. You check the spots nobody else would think to look, because that's where the truth about a house lived. Not on the surfaces people could see, but in the corners they couldn't. And if the corners told the truth about the house, the dishcloths told the truth about the kitchen. She didn't just wash them, she boiled them. A big pot on the back burner, water rolling hard, and every rag and dishcloth in the house went in like laundry going through a fever. The boiling killed bacteria that regular washing couldn't touch, a practice that predated germ theory by generations. Black women in the rural South had been boiling cloth since before anyone could explain why it worked. They just knew that the families who did it got sick less often. Some added a splash of bleach, others dropped in a sliver of lye soap. The rags came out limp and scalded and smelling like nothing at all, which was exactly the point. A clean rag should smell like clean water and steam, not like yesterday's grease. You'd hang them on the line or drape them over the porch rail, and by afternoon, they were dry, stiff, and ready to go back to work. Placing chalk in closets to absorb moisture and prevent mildew was an African American solution for protecting clothes in humid climates. Grandmothers would hang bundles of white chalk or place pieces on shelves, keeping fabrics fresh and mold-free through damp seasons. Scientists confirmed that chalk's calcium carbonate composition is highly porous and naturally absorbs moisture from surrounding air. The chalk would eventually crumble as it saturated, signaling time for replacement. This hack protected valuable clothing without chemical mothballs, whose smell permeated everything and concerned health-conscious families. Women taught daughters to check chalk regularly and replace it seasonally, building maintenance habits that preserved wardrobes. The technique demonstrated how school supplies could serve household purposes. Applying toothpaste to remove crayon marks from walls was a cleaning discovery African American mothers celebrated and shared widely. When children decorated walls with waxy colors, grandmothers would dab white toothpaste on marks and rub gently with cloth until they vanished. Scientists now understand that toothpaste contains mild abrasives designed to remove stains from enamel, which works similarly on painted surfaces without damaging the finish. The paste's slight grittiness lifted waxy crayon while leaving paint intact beneath. This hack saved countless walls from repainting and reduced stress when children's creativity exceeded boundaries. Women passed this knowledge through networks of mothers facing similar challenges, building community through shared solutions. Placing shoes in the freezer to eliminate odors was a technique African American households employed when commercial deodorizers were unavailable. Grandmothers would seal smelly sneakers in plastic bags and freeze them overnight, returning them odor-free by morning. Scientists now confirm that freezing kills bacteria responsible for foot odor, achieving results no spray could match. The extreme cold destroys bacterial cell walls, eliminating the source rather than masking it. This hack was particularly valuable in households with active children whose shoes took serious punishment. Women would clear freezer space on Sunday nights, treating the family's shoes for the week. The practice demonstrated resourceful thinking using existing appliances. She didn't have a title for what she did. There was no job description for the woman who kept the floors scrubbed, the windows clear, the drawers lined, the towels folded, the porch swept, the quilts stored, the grease saved, the walls washed, and the children taught to do the same. She did it because the house was hers, sometimes the only thing that was fully hers, and she would not let it fall apart. Her hands stayed rough from bleach and lye and hot water. Her knees ached from the floors. Her back carried the weight of a house that never once looked like it carried any weight at all. She made it look effortless, and that was the trick. The house ran so smooth that people forgot someone was running it. When she stopped, the house changed within a week. The corners collected dust, the windows dimmed, the porch went unswept. The rituals she built over a lifetime faded one by one, quiet as a candle going out in an empty room. Nobody figured that out until she was gone. Not for your chest, that came later. She went straight for your feet. A thick coat of Vicks Vapor Rub smeared across the soles, rubbed between the toes, and then a pair of her thickest wool socks pulled up tight while she told you to get under those covers and stay there. By morning, the cough had broken. The camphor, eucalyptus oil, and menthol and Vicks act as topical cough suppressants according to the National Institutes of Health, and the feet application was widespread in African American households across the rural South through the 1950s and 60s. But the real cure was never just the Vicks. It was the weight of her hand pressing it into your skin, the smell of menthol mixing with whatever she had simmering on the stove, and her voice saying you would feel better by morning. She is gone now. The jar sits in a cabinet that nobody opens the same way.
Lady Baltimore cake was the grande dame of Southern Christmas baking. A towering white layer cake with filling so complex it required its own recipe card. The cake was delicate white, made with egg whites only, producing ethereal texture that melted on the tongue. The filling was the star, a boiled frosting mixed with chopped figs, raisins, pecans, and candied cherries, creating sweet and chewy contrast to the tender crumb. The entire cake was enrobed in more fluffy white frosting, creating pristine appearance belying the richness within. Named for the novel by Owen Wister, Lady Baltimore cake became synonymous with gracious Southern entertaining and elegant holiday gatherings. Hostesses began preparations days in advance, knowing multiple components required careful timing. Cutting the first slice revealed the treasure hidden inside, and guests would gasp at generous filling studded with dried fruits and nuts.
If the clothes had to be crisp, the windows had to be clear, and she cleaned them with nothing but yesterday's newspaper and a spray bottle of vinegar water. You balled the paper tight, sprayed the glass until it dripped, and wiped in circles until the streaks disappeared. The black ink acted as a mild abrasive that lifted grime without scratching, and the vinegar cut through grease that soap only smeared around. During the 1940s, when commercial glass cleaners were expensive and marketed almost exclusively to white households, this was the standard in black homes across the South and in the migration cities up north. You learned it by watching. Nobody explained the science. You just saw her windows were always spotless, and eventually she handed you a section of the paper and told you to start on the back door, before the doctor, before the pharmacy.
Grape jelly and cream cheese sandwiches combined two pantry staples into something that felt like a treat even when money was short. Housewives would spread cream cheese on one slice of bread, grape jelly on the other, and press them together for a quick, sweet, and tangy sandwich. The cream cheese gave it richness while the jelly provided bright sweetness, making it more filling than just jelly alone. Children loved the colorful combination, and mothers appreciated how easy it was to prepare. It was cheap, cheerful, and adaptable, often using whatever flavor of jelly was available in the pantry. Some families even toasted the bread to add crunch, making it feel fancier than it really was.
That orange box of Arm & Hammer did more work than any other product in the house. She dipped a wet finger into it and brushed her teeth before toothpaste became the standard. She sprinkled it into the bathtub and scrubbed until the porcelain gleamed without a scratch. She mixed it with water into a paste that pulled the sting out of bee stings and the itch out of mosquito bites on summer evenings. Researchers at the University of Michigan confirmed baking soda was used by more than half of older African American adults for ailments from heartburn to skin irritation, often in combinations passed through 3 or 4 generations. A pinch in a glass of water settled an upset stomach in minutes. A dusting inside shoes killed odor overnight. A small dish left open in the refrigerator absorbed whatever smell the leftover fish had left behind. One box, 50 cents, 100 uses, and she knew every single one because her mother had known them too.
Among the unlikely culinary heroes of the Great Depression was a sandwich featuring sliced tomatoes sprinkled lightly with sugar, the tomato and sugar sandwich. Tomatoes, easy to grow and abundant in backyard gardens, were embraced as a budget-friendly food staple during hard economic times. This sandwich cleverly paired the natural acidity of ripe tomatoes with a touch of sweetness, making them appealing enough even for skeptical children. Surprisingly, sugar, though carefully rationed, was frequently recommended in 1930s homemaking guides as a versatile flavor enhancer, transforming humble ingredients into tastier meals. Newspapers even promoted tomatoes as the perfect vegetable for cash-strapped families, humorously dubbing them "poor man's oranges" due to their vibrant color and juicy interior. Combining tomatoes and sugar wasn't just a quirky experiment, it was practical ingenuity. Sweetening tomatoes masked their tartness, giving them broader culinary appeal and preventing precious produce from going to waste. Modern taste buds might initially find the concept puzzling. After all, tomato sandwiches traditionally call for mayonnaise and salt, but Depression-era cooks weren't afraid to rewrite culinary rules if it meant saving pennies.
Before anything else was even considered, you gargled warm salt water. A tablespoon dissolved in a cup so hot it nearly burned your lips, tilted back, gargled until your eyes watered, then spit and do it again. A study of older African American adults in rural North Carolina found warm saltwater gargling was among the most frequently reported remedies used for sore throats, mouth sores, and toothaches when a dentist was miles away. Some added a splash of peroxide for extra sting. The salt drew infection to the surface, reduced swelling, and created a hostile environment for bacteria, all for a pinch from the box on the counter. Your mother did not ask if it hurt. She knew it hurt. And when you complained, she told you about gargling by candlelight in a house with no running water, and suddenly your sore throat did not seem so bad.
Nothing tidy about a sloppy Joe, and that is the whole point. These school cafeteria icons had one mission: to hit like a flavor bomb and leave a trail behind. Tangy ground beef cooked with tomato paste, onions, and whatever seasoning the lunch lady felt like using that day. Scooped in a steaming pile onto soft hamburger buns that were usually a little too small. You would take one bite, and the filling would slide out the other side like it was trying to escape. Your hands? Covered. Your tray? A disaster. Your smile? Huge. They were sweet, salty, savory, and just chaotic enough to make lunch feel like a party. Even the name sounded like something you should not be allowed to say in class. Sloppy Joes were not reserved for fancy moments. They were served with plastic forks and half a chocolate milk carton. But they became legendary. Maybe it was because they tasted like comfort food mixed with rebellion. Or maybe it was just the fact that no one ever got through one without needing extra napkins. Either way, it earned its place in the Sandwich Hall of Fame. But what if I told you there was a sandwich out there that combined egg, gravy, and a hamburger bun, and somehow made it work?
She did not reach for ice. She reached for a brown paper bag, tore it into strips, soaked them in apple cider vinegar, and pressed them flat against whatever was burned, bruised, or running too hot. A child's forehead, a grease splatter on a forearm, a sunburn from playing outside without permission. The vinegar-soaked paper cooled the skin on contact, a poultice technique tracing back centuries through both African and European folk medicine. In the 1930s and 40s, before first aid kits were common in black households, a bag from the grocer and a bottle of vinegar were the emergency room. The acetic acid reduced swelling, while evaporation pulled fever down. Your grandmother trusted this more than aspirin, and when you flinched, she held you still and said, "Hush," because she had been doing this since before you were born.
Caramel cake stood as the ultimate test of a Southern baker's skill, its temperamental frosting separating accomplished cooks from ambitious beginners. The cake layers were straightforward butter cake, tender and golden, but the caramel frosting demanded complete attention and nerves of steel. Sugar, butter, and milk were cooked together until they reached the soft ball stage, then beaten furiously as the mixture cooled, transforming from liquid to spreadable frosting in minutes. The timing was everything. Beat too soon and the frosting would be runny. Wait too long and it would seize into a grainy mess. Successful caramel frosting was smooth, creamy, and deeply flavored with burnt sugar that tasted of sophistication and effort. Christmas gatherings always featured at least one caramel cake, its amber frosting glowing in the candlelight. Reputations were built on caramel frosting, and recipes were guarded like state secrets. Those who mastered it never revealed exactly when they started beating.
She would fill the basin after supper, not the good basin, the one with the chip on the rim that lived under the bathroom sink. Hot water, 3 scoops of Epsom salts, and her feet disappeared into it with a sigh that carried the weight of a 12-hour day. In a study of older adults in the rural South, 3/4 of African American men and women reported using Epsom salts regularly, naming more uses than their white counterparts did. A cup in the bath water pulled soreness from legs that had stood all day cooking and cleaning. A warm compress soaked in Epsom water soothed a swollen knee. Some gargled with it for fever blisters when nothing else was available. The magnesium sulfate drew inflammation through the skin, and whether or not she knew the chemistry, she knew the relief. After 30 minutes, she dried her feet slowly, rubbed them with Vaseline, pulled on cotton socks, and did not stand again until morning. That basin was her only luxury.
Divinity cake took its name from the heavenly candy that inspired its frosting, a confection so temperamental that Southern bakers joked it required divine intervention to succeed. The cake layers were typically white or yellow butter cake, simple and sturdy enough to support the elaborate frosting that made this dessert famous. Divinity frosting was made by cooking sugar syrup to precise temperature, then beating it into stiff egg whites until it transformed into billowy, cloud-like peaks. The frosting was impossibly light, yet held its shape, tasting of pure sweetness with a texture that dissolved on the tongue. Humidity was the enemy, and experienced bakers refused to attempt divinity on rainy days. The finished cake looked like it was topped with fresh snowdrifts, making it a natural choice for Christmas tables. Pecans were often pressed into the frosting, adding crunch and earthiness to the sweet topping. Making divinity cake successfully was a badge of honor among Southern bakers, proof of skill and patience.
The smell hit you before you saw the pot. Sharp, alkaline, and dangerous. That was lye soap being made in the backyard, and every child knew to stay away from the kettle. She rendered fat from the last hog killing, strained it through cloth until it ran clear, and mixed it with lye water filtered through hardwood ashes. The mixture boiled for hours in a cast iron pot, stirred with a wooden paddle used for nothing else, until it thickened into a brownish paste that set overnight into bars. That same soap washed the clothes on Monday, scrubbed the floors on Tuesday, bathed the kids on Saturday, and treated poison ivy any day it showed up. Before the 1950s, lye soap was the only soap many black families in the rural South ever knew. The women who made it tested the lye strength by dropping in a chicken feather. If it dissolved, the mixture was right. That knowledge did not come from a book.
Lentil mash sandwiches were filling, hearty, and born from the need to stretch protein at the lowest cost. Lentils were cheap, easy to cook in large batches, and lasted well in storage. Housewives boiled them until soft, mashed them with onion or seasoning, and spread the mixture onto bread. The texture was thick and earthy, making the sandwich heavy and satisfying. It resembled a vegetarian pâté, though no one at the time would have called it that. For families unable to afford meat, this was a practical way to provide sustenance that kept stomachs full through the day. Lentil mash sandwiches reflected both the frugality of the era and the global influence of simple foods making their way into American homes. They carried protein, fiber, and substance, which made them a reliable staple in lean times. Lentil mash sandwiches may sound humble, but they reveal just how inventive 1950s housewives could be when feeding families.
Those kitchens went quiet, and the hands that kept them never got their credit. Like and subscribe if yours were among them.